All right. Greetings and salutations, everybody. Happy what are we? Thursday? No, Thursday. We're Wednesday, right? Or are we Tuesday? No, we're Wednesday. Oh gosh. Or Wednesday. Yes, Wednesday. You might not be able to see what I have open here, but amongst the tabs in my browser, I have turned to Worlds Without Number, use the tables and things to help situate ourselves. We've done a lot of work, and it's been rather disorganized, which I suppose I would maybe be apologetic for, but I guess I'm not, because I kind of feel like this is just a real organic process. Maybe at some point, once I have this all tuned up and figured, I'll make a video as I'm cracking open a blood orange tangerine spindrift for the working man. I will create a video where I maybe get into the process a little bit more, where it can be more, well, everything will be settled essentially. But I'm not there yet. I'm still trying to figure things out. But I think it's time to kind of flesh out where we're going to be playing. So I'm looking at the sort of what I guess I don't know which pages are these. Well, starting on one page, basically 116, 115. Basically the creating campaign section. I'm not worrying about the world right now. I'm not going to worry about some of these global events. We'll figure that out later. It's more like, okay, region stuff, but I'm not even concerned so much about the gods, which I will probably figure it out separately. Kingdoms, because we're gonna need kingdoms. We're gonna need sort of places. We're gonna need places to go, people to see. So I thought I could use the Worlds Without Number, I guess, guide, system, mechanics, tables, whatever, to find some of these, to find some answers. Now, if we go back to my prep here, I still need to redo this map. I don't have Worldographer on my machine yet here on so I don't have, see if I can fix that a little bit. I don't have Worldographer on my machine yet on this newer computer. So I'm sticking with this map. I'm probably going to keep the major towns layout. Just ignore the dashed lines for the roads, because I think I'm going to have to simplify them. And probably, I forget which app I use, but probably be nice if they came up with a way to kind of simplify these roads a bit. Though maybe it's accurate. I don't know. I don't have any sense of what ancient or medieval kind of roads were like. So it might be perfectly reasonable that all these things are I feel like extra loops and things with no reason. But then going through these kind of wooded areas where there's no settlements at all placed here, it doesn't make sense why you'd have all these crisscrossing. I imagine you would, like, there's no direct road right here, but there's like all these roads going through, but there's no settlements. I don't know. The first thing I want to do is I want to position where we're going to be starting. And you know, like I said, we're going to be probably monkeying around with this, but just generally, I like the idea that if you're starting, well, this I'm guessing are little islands. I might have to just delete them, or maybe we keep them. But I think I want to start on the mainland. But I like the idea of being on the coast. And I'm also thinking, with these types of icons, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, that the circle, I take it to be some kind of walled thing. And I'm guessing the outer circle with the inner filled. So there's some that have an outline of a circle, just the border. And then some have a filled smaller circle. And then you have the filled smaller circle inside the larger bordered circle. I'm taking the bordered ones to be towns, basically, with walls. And then kind of more cities or capitals are these ones that are the filled circle inside of the outer border circle, if that makes sense. It might not. That's what I'm going with. So there's one that I'm hovering over here. If you could see it right here, that's kind of in the, I guess I can move this over slightly to make it easier to see. This one here in the kind of the end, or this, I don't know, this is a little peninsula here on the southeastern area of our region here. There's a, looks like a walled city here, so that would be kind of a capital. I don't think I want to start in a capital. I'm thinking starting in maybe one of these three. This is more of a village. So we have, so basically on these three, we've got two towns would look like would be little islands. I'm guessing something like a Nantucket. If I'm thinking kind of American sense, kind of Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket sort of thing. You can insert whatever small island with a settlement on it that you want. There's plenty to choose from. And then they're kind of more villages on these little islands. And then there's on the mainlands, one of them this is kind of interesting because it's got, well, the road, they all have roads leading out here, but then the roads basically go over the water. I'm not sure what they mean by that. But I like this one here with the swamp. Just makes a neat barrier. I imagine this northeastern town that's sort of its own island. There's a couple of even ones way out there, kind of off, maybe off the shore. It doesn't even necessarily have to be, because remember these hexes, they're just abstractions. So it's not like the shoreline necessarily ends where the lines end. It's just that it's more water than anything else. So we might argue that what these really represent are little, I don't know, little spits of land that jut out into the water here and have something in it. But I kind of like the idea of them being islands. Let's see. Heroes says, I've always used it as a filled circle as a village, empty circle as a town, and a filled circle inside an open circle as a city capital. I think I think we're on the same wavelength. That makes sense. They don't give a key in the application to give me a key. So I didn't know what they intended, but I think that's good. I think it's right. I think it makes sense. So I'm thinking we're going to start. I kind of like this one here. It's a little bit of a crossroads. We've got roads leading north and south. This one is a village is kind of interesting too, but I'm going to rework these roads. But this one's kind of nice. There's a bunch of wilderness around it. It might change, but I probably would want to keep the general character of having this sort of wilderness area in here. But you've got some other towns, and remembering that in the goal or the main thrust of this hex crawl is not going to be doing mega dungeons. It's going to be more surface level stuff, smaller dungeons, but more single session dungeons, 6, 7, 8 room kind of things, and not massive dungeons. So I'm going to be spending a lot of time on the surface, going around and hopefully getting involved with all sorts of, who knows what kind of shenanigans we'll get involved with. And I'm thinking I would probably maybe put some more villages along the shoreline. We'll have to figure it out. So I guess we'll start here. We'll start here with this. This will be our city number 1, our home city. So let's go look at some tables and see what we've got. I've got, hold on a minute. Let me take a swig of that Spindrift for the working man. And now let me get a D20 out here. So we got a D20, our handy dandy D20, which we can roll. We already know the terrain, so I don't think I need this. We got the terrain already, so that's fine. We need details. So actually what I need to do, I need to make a template. Let's make a template. So we're going to switch back here. Actually, let me copy. I'm going to zoom out here a minute. I'm going to make terrain features. We're going to add, paste this in. How dangerous is the feature? I'm just going to put a bunch of these in here so we can figure it out. What use is the feature? Put my die down here while I'm just copying, pasting things over. Let's see. What else have we got? We've got how populated is this feature? This probably is more. I'm gonna put that now, but I think these tables are probably more for what's around, no, and not necessarily what's in. I'll have to probably jump around to find. No, wrong way. Let me drag this over here. Here we go. Oops, I keep going to the wrong tabs. Let's see. There's a few things that Ouija, as much as I love it, there are some annoyances. And the way they work with these, sometimes with the selecting of different parental and, or I don't know, child and parent objects when you're nesting them, it's not quite as clean as I would like. Oops. That might have been my fault that time. And is that it? Okay? So we've got that can be a template we can use. Nation construction, city placement, marking wastelands. That's fine. Disputes. Let's see. Are we supposed to roll here? What are we rolling here? Positive. Oh, I see. So yeah. So that this will be nation features or kingdom features, I guess. So we got terrain features. We can use that. And go ahead and just duplicate it to make it easy. Call this kingdom features. And now we'll pull in some stuff. No, not that. There we go. Disputes with neighboring states. Ugh, going the wrong way. Positive ties with neighboring states. Let's see. Current national problems. I know we're using nation and kingdom fairly loosely here. Good things happening right now. Is that the end? Oh, and then a theme. And then theme, and then that's about it. Okay. And we'll get to societies. We'll get to societies later. Kingdom features. So we don't have a name for our current kingdom. That's okay. I'm going to grab this. I'm going to duplicate it again. Just because I like to be clean and neat. There we go. Got some templates. All right, let's roll up some kingdom features here for what I hope. And I might have to move these around. If I get something really nasty and antagonistic and not nice, I probably don't want to start there. So I'm going to feel free. I'm going to feel enabled to do some moving around of the things. All right, so disputes with a neighboring state. What do we got here? We've got 14, which says a working of theirs caused problems. Now, working, I'll have to reread. I forget exactly in the verbiage what it is. I think it's some kind of construct or something of that sort. And I will have to adjust these to obviously fit my setting. But that's fine to start. Now, as far as positive ties, we get, let's see, I got 4. Their culture is widely admired here. All right, so we have some cultural admiration going on. Current national problem. What is your problem, sir? 2. Ooh, verminous monsters are swarming. That's like what's happening in my home game, because in my home game, verminous monsters are definitely swarming. And then good things. Number we got 12. 2 rival lords have started to make peace. Great. And then what's a thematic? Let's grab a thematic element. Oh my gosh. 19 triumph. With victory, a fresh memory. Okay. Interesting. So this is call this Nation 1. Or Kingdom 1, I guess. I don't want to call it Kingdom 1. Which is technically our starting location. Doesn't mean we have to be born to this kingdom. We can kind of figure that stuff out as we go. If something, depending once we start to fill these out, we can decide, So I think the thing is we need to figure out. What I'm thinking right now, subject to change, of course, is that each of these circular ones really is that these are all kingdoms, petty kingdoms, if you want to call it that, not big kingdoms. I'm thinking with this one down here that's got a real city would be the largest kingdom. Maybe this particular one controls a larger swath of, maybe up until these swamps. I kind of like these swamps could be a border that, and maybe even off and have multiple. So that they are maybe the more advanced, at least more organized, have bigger populations, whereas a lot of these other ones have one kind of main city or walled city or capital, and have some small villages, and that's kind of it for them, which gives us a lot of canvas to work with. We're going to have to develop a bunch of these kingdoms. I'm not going to do them all at once in any particular moment. I'm going to wait until I need to. I'll have to name, what I want to do really is have some area. If I were to, let me just use this pointer thing here. I'd want to have something like this, not including the water. Want to know about these. If I'm starting here, I want to know about here, and these guys. And then I'm not going to worry about these other ones until we actually get there. Is what that's my current modus operandi, if you will. So that's Kingdom 1. We need to see now about doing these cities. I think we've got towns or settlements. Or maybe we should do societal. Yeah, I guess we can do some of these. Let me set up. So let's see if this was Kingdom 1. I guess I'll just add them. Just make one big list. Typical skin color of populace. I think maybe I'll just roll them as I go. That's probably a bit easier. I got 16. Is it? Oh, I needed an 8-sided die. Got ahead of myself. Rolling D20s when I need a D8. Where is my D8? No, that's D10. That's a D8. What did I get? I got a 5. Ruddy or tanned complexions. Great. Next one is, hair color and hair texture. These are also D8s. So hair color, I got lighter browns. Let's type it in. Come on. Lighter browns, hair texture. 6. I got thin and fine. Can I move these out? Oh, I can. Good. So I'm wondering at some point I might want to separate some of these. But for right now, I'm not going to worry about it too much. All right. So that's hair and texture. Great. We got eye coloration. Generally speaking, I don't really care about these too much personally. I'm fine with just having a great melange. And I don't, it's some kind of, I don't know, ethnic, I don't even know what to call it, consistency maybe. It doesn't, what's that? Get out of there. Does not matter to me at all. But just going through the process, so I'll go through the process. I got 5 again. Ambers and yellows. Ooh. I wonder if, what was the guy's name from A Christmas Story? He had yellow eyes. Wrong way again. Now, what's the typical build, which is a D4? So let me find a D4. One of these dice I had out. I don't know what I did with it. There it is. I got 3, which is either short and stocky or tall and slender. Well, that covers a lot of ground. That covers a lot of ground indeed. Hey, Frederick. Yeah, what was the guy's name? He's the one that he was the guy who chased the kids around all the time. Oh, I forget what his name is. Like shoot. Scott Farkas. Scott Farkas had yellow eyes. Maybe he was maybe he was a descendant of one of these people. And then I forget the toady kid's name. Optional common forms of adornment. I'm all about adorning things. So let me see what I get. What do we have here for adornment? That's a D12. Boy, they're really using all the dice here. All right, here's the D12. I got 6. Patterned hair shaving or depilation. Okay. All right. And then we've got optional physical quirks or traits. Well, you know, if we're going in, I want to go whole hog. And that is a D20. Back to good old D20. We get 5, which is they have a tail of some sort. Oh, interesting. Okay. I watched Avatar: Way of the Water. I don't know how I feel about that movie. Maybe the tails made me think about it because, and I guess spoiler alert, but if you've seen the previews, it's Way of the Water. So there's kind of water Navi that are slightly different from, I guess, jungle or forest Navi, and it's expressed. I don't say for the most part, but one of the big ways they express the movie is that they have different tails. That just made me think about it. I wasn't as big a fan of the Avatar movies as I think a lot of people were. Oh, I don't know. I don't know how many people were really that much of it. All right, so we got values. But man, I'm going to say the first things first. That movie is, man, it's long. I mean, I thought I was getting ready for the end, and we're looking at it like, oh my gosh, you know, we got I think I was like going to bed, or I don't know, we're like, hey, I got stuff. Like, boy, how much is left? And it was like, oh, we got an hour left of this thing. It was like, geez, like, man. All right, this is a D100 table, and I got 99. Wow. Societal or ethnic superiority over all outsiders. That's interesting. So I might need to put these folks somewhere else because they don't seem super friendly. These seem like kind of a good antagonistic peoples. Yeah, Heroes has been able to finish. The first one, and Frederick calls it Space Pocahontas 2 Electric Boogaloo. I mean, it definitely suffers from that kind of white savior problem, which just amazed me at the time where he did it, because it was like, man, we've already had these movies and it's kind of been exposed, this kind of issue. And so you're going to go ahead and do it. But of course, you're not using an Earth ethnic group. You're just going to use an alien that kind of stands in for an Earth ethnic group. I don't know. It's just I wasn't super pleased with that, and it's not a great story or anything. It was just kind of like, oh look, it's wonderful special effects. And then they did this one, and it's super long. There's like these expository. There's kind of a voiceover exposition at points, which feels kind of unnecessary. I feel like this was not a movie that needed to be as nearly as long as it is. I think there's a lot of stuff they could have covered quickly, or that, I don't know, they added in they didn't really need to. You know, you can kind of see, like, you get that they're trying to say things, and some of it's fine. I really hated the way it was so overly simplified in the first one, to the extent that you have the mineral they're all chasing after is called unobtainium. It's like, oh, could you just be less imaginative? I mean, the only thing I can think of that's near as bad as that was in that stupid Star Trek remake, when they called the stuff red matter. It's like you couldn't even be bothered to come up with kind of a Star Trek. Star Trek loves its kind of pseudo scientific names, and the best you've got is red matter, and unobtainium is maybe just a half step above it, but in the worst kind of way. And then this one, now there's a new, I don't know if it's really a new, well, I guess it is a new thing that they're after. Well, that comes, I don't want to spoil the whole movie, but I mean, it did boatloads. I mean, it's impressive that it made as much money as it did. I don't want, let's see. 18. Oh, the Aztecs. Okay. This is a example template society. And whoops, I might not use all of, well, we'll see. It's a good thing to be to fill in when I need to. Okay, so is this the end of the, what do you need, government? I guess we got to do the section 2. I'm just going to go through all this stuff, and then we'll do a little analysis of what we've got. So I'm just going to keep on rolling. If I can hit Control V properly. Oops, I didn't. I guess I didn't copy. Oops. But the thing is, too, with these movies is, oops, no, I'm no longer enamored with the special effects. We just seen it all now. So the idea that before you'd never seen, I rolled a 1, you've never seen this kind of movie. Oh, I've never seen this before, with I don't know, the integration of CGI just on the scale of it, with the live action kind of stuff. I don't know. It's effects bonanza. But then I'm not trying to take anything away from James Cameron and crew, because it was, at the time, it was very ahead of it a little bit, just taking stuff like what Lord of the Rings had done, and things like that, and just really just taking it to a whole new level. Like, fine, I got you. I totally see what you're coming from. But the underpinnings were not very good. But now you fast forward to this movie, and it's no longer ahead of that curve. I have no doubt that someone could tell me, and I would totally believe them, that they might tell me, well, Todd, in some this kind of technical ways, if only you knew the technical stuff, what James Cameron's doing is just beyond the pale in terms of technical wizardry and all that stuff. I would say you're probably right, and I don't know, and I don't care, because it doesn't translate enough for me. It's maybe if I saw it in the movie theater, some stuff will become apparent that isn't, but it's not impressive to me, just having these effects. So then what are you left with? It's kind of just not a great movie, in my opinion. Not a great movie. And man, is it long. And the other thing too, which, look, I like a lot of movies that aren't particularly good. Okay. I'm not ashamed to say there are movies I like that, if I were to try to break it down objectively and look at it, I'm like, yeah, this is not a good movie. There are certain films I will die on the hill defending them, but there are other movies that I can totally look and say, listen, I love this movie, but yeah, it's very flawed. It's got a lot of problems, but generally what it comes back to is there's something fun about the film. that that tickles me or somehow speaks to me. I'll give a couple of examples. Men at Work, the movie with Emilio Estevez and Charlie Sheen from I guess the 80s. It's not good. Keith David is in it. There's a few people in it. It's not a good movie, but man, that movie tickles me, especially Keith David with his thing, his hatred for cops and and cop adjacent workers, and just the goofiness. It just the assassins, or not the assassins, like they're hitmen, or I don't know whoever they were. It's goofy, but it's kind of it's fun, right? I have nostalgia from back in the day. I can look at it now and I can still have a lot of fun with it, even though, if you were to say, like, Todd, this movie is actually awful, I wouldn't be able to disagree with you, because there's a lot in it that either hasn't aged particularly well, was never that good to begin with. I get it, right? That to me is a movie, but there's something in it that's fun for me. Fun for me. There's nothing fun for me in this, and maybe there is. I'm not saying that there isn't anything fun for anybody. Maybe there is for certain folks. Will find something fun, but I don't look at these Avatar movies and find something fun, which is another way of saying that I don't need to see that movie ever again. There's nothing in there that I'm like, oh man, I really want to watch that again. There were movies that at certain points that were kind of FX movies, or I remember when I first started getting the kind of home theater systems and I started buying surround sound. You'd go on a forums or you just talking, and there would be movies that you wanted to buy, not because they were good, but because they had some big moment where they used the subwoofer, there was some big bass drop or something that was just awesome, or they did something interesting with the surround sound. So if you had a decent setup, you could really get these neat effects coming from the movies, and you just wanted to experience them and show them off. And there's nothing in these Avatar movies that I need to see. Nothing fun. It's not like even let's say the Star Wars prequels had moments. Okay, I don't need, let's say I have a single ruler, so I don't need to do multiple rulers. Even the even the Star Wars prequels, for example, as rotten as they are in many ways, had moments I could go back to, and the context I may not have liked, say like the pod racing, but just as a thing, as a spectacle, they were kind of fun. I could dig watching the pod racing. I hate the yippies. I don't like that the kid, I don't like any of that. But just looking at it, just putting it outside of the context of all the dreck that's going on, to say, look, as just a fun moment for 5 minutes as these guys are tearing around the desert in these funky kind of car things, speeders, it's fun. Nothing like that in Avatar. There's nothing that I just want to queue up and tell somebody, like, just look at this. Like, okay, all this stuff is whatever, but just look. Like, no. I'm wondering if I need to go through all this. I'm going to do one more page, and then I want to do like a recap. The history stuff is cool too. Let's see how fast I can get through this part, and then we'll see about doing a little bit of recap. And apologies for not talking it through, but I feel like I want to get all the context stuff out, and then we can try to decide how this all will fit together. Now I need a D6. Now we've gone to the D6. Heroes also appreciates Men at Work. Yeah, it's a fun movie. It was a fun movie at the time. There's a lot of fun movies like that. Let's see. Dean Powell says the first Dungeons and Dragons movie was great, but only because of the acting. I don't know. It might be because I'm older, but man, that movie just, I hated it. I haven't watched it in ages. I hated that movie with a passion. And I think part of the problem was you had actors in there that were otherwise good, like Jeremy Irons. And it's just, I don't know what he's doing. I don't know if they asked him to do that. And I'm fine with having some kind of hamming it up a little bit. I'm not suggesting he's got to play it like, I don't know, I want to say Shakespeare, but I kind of feel like if somebody had said play it up like it's Shakespeare, even though granted it's not, it might have been just better. Or, what's his name? My favorite Doctor Who, or Riff Raff. I think Riff Raff from Rocky Horror Picture Show, whose name I'm forgetting. All these folks are in there, and it's just, terrible. And especially at the time, like I don't know, I don't know if it's again, I'm probably dating myself, but coming out of being a fan of D&D in the well, for me, more or less the 80s. Let's just call it the 80s, in which there was a lot of, at least I felt a lot of sort of shame, embarrassment. Um, it seemed like it was kind of a secret thing. And I remember going through just with people where you'd kind of, you want to talk about gaming stuff, and it's kind of, you're sort of playing this dance of, I think this guy's a gamer, but I'm not sure. So let me try to throw something out there. And then if they're not gamers, I can just kind of, I can sort of explain it away, or you see something almost like a code and like, oh, this guy's a gamer. Cool. Whatever. Right. It was very, you were very, very almost, I felt for me anyway. And because I was kind of a fugitive, it just wasn't cool. It wasn't something that, it was just not something that you would proclaim loud and proud on the streets, so to speak. I mean, now I go pick up my daughter from school or take her to school wearing my Dungeons and Dragons t-shirt, and I don't care, right? And I've gotten people giving me like compliments on the shirt and not like harassing me. Of course, I'm 6'3". I'm a middle-aged man, so that makes a difference too. But when that first movie came out, it felt like, okay, here's a chance to kind of turn to sort of show off that we haven't had a good sci-fi movie, or no, sorry, good fantasy movies. I think it predates Lord of the Rings movies. I could be wrong, but it's kind of like, here's this chance to really kind of turn it around, to present the game in a different way, and get people thinking like, oh, this is cool. Oh, this is this cool thing. And then it's like, so as it bombed, it was just, it really was deflating. Yeah, Dean Powell's not from the States. Yeah, I mean, I think different people had different experiences. I mean, there were cons and things going on. I just wasn't a part of them. And, I just felt like, and I'm sure some of it is me. Like, I'm not even saying it's all, some of it's just the way I was and where I was in my life journey, that I felt very much like this gaming stuff was something that you sort of did on the down low. You kind of found people you could trust to talk about it, and then otherwise you didn't mention it because you didn't want to get branded as some kind of goof. So I think it was, and I think it was part of just how I was, but I certainly wasn't alone in feeling that way. So I don't think I was by myself, because when I found friends and we would, gaming friends and stuff, I felt like I ran into folks of my age and around that had some similar experiences, but now it's totally different, which is great. But I think the movie just kind of played into that in a way too. Not only was it awful, but I think just like you can look at things like Critical Role and stuff that's made D&D seem kind of cool. Not just Critical Role, I don't want to put them on some kind of pedestal, but a lot of the reading about and hearing about and seeing celebrities and people who were otherwise, cool, for lack of a better word, and they're gamers. It kind of gives it a different, people see it through a different lens. And when that movie came out, it was kind of like, this is our chance. Instead, it was like, no, we're going to double down on the lens. This is all a bunch of goofy nonsense. Hero says that Willow was a better D&D movie than the original D&D movie. I mean, absolutely. I mean, there's so many movies that, recently I got the 4K version of disc of Dragon Slayer. There's a 4K release, and I got that. I'm still someone who will buy physical media, especially for stuff that I love. And when I saw that 4K release come out, I jumped on it, and it's awesome. That's a great movie. Willow's a great movie. I love Krull, the Beastmaster. There's a few that are very good movies. Oh my gosh, this list has gotten a mile long. Look at that. All right, where are we? Let's see. I want to just maybe get through history, and then we're gonna pull in and go through this whole shebang and see what we've got to work with here. And this is something that I'm going to be refining my process. I might make my own tables at some point, or I'll figure out which tables I think get me the most bang for the bucks. I'm not going to want to go through this every time unless I can find some kind of automated tool to do it for me. And I'm not going to need all this. It might be something for a lot of these places that it can be that discovery that in the moment, once we're playing through and something comes up, I can go back to Worlds Without Number or using Mythic and then kind of come up with answers. So I'm just sort of doing it for this one because I imagine this one might be where I'd start out, though. I'm thinking this might be like a good, maybe it makes a better antagonistic kind of peoples like the next one over. But either way, these guys will be kind of major players in terms of the starting game. So that's, I feel good going through this. And then I will have this big template for the next one. Let's see. This is a D10. I got a 5 again. It became the ruling class. Dean Pell says, Conan is also a great D&D movie, right down to using meta-knowledge of attacking a construct's eyes to wound it and punching a camel because you can, and it's bad at you. Yeah, Conan's another good one. It's particularly the first one, the Conan the Barbarian. The Destroyer has its moments, but it's not as good. Not as good. And then Red Sonja is worse. But yeah, the first one, Conan Prime, was good. All right, I need a D100, which I've got. I got 60 on the button. But yeah, something happened. I mean, I'm sure that from a film history standpoint, there's probably I guess what I'm saying is that when you go into the 80s, or maybe it's just the visibility, because you come into the 80s and there's a wealth of fantasy movies, a lot of sci-fi movies too. And I mean, I'm just talking about kind of B movies. I think one of the things that was so wonderful when Lord of the Rings came out, and Harry Potter to a lesser extent, was that these were big budget fantasy or fantasy adjacent, wherever you want to call Harry Potter, fantasy movies. And you hadn't seen them. I mean, I couldn't even mention what would be the equivalent film in years past for a big budget kind of major fantasy movie. I mean, you could go back to Star Wars in terms of sci fantasy or whatever you want to call that. There wasn't really anything else. But there had been in the 80s a nice steady drip of at least kind of B-level fantasy movies. And I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was just that kind of B movies just sort of changed in general, or if they just turned to other genres. I'm not sure what happened, because you go and you can list, and I'm sure I could go on IMDb and you could pull up a list of the 80s, and you've got a pretty good, I mean, if it was a pretty good time for again, kind of fantasy movies. Sci-fi movies maybe a little bit less. And then it just seemed to just go away, which is kind of another reason when that D&D movie comes out. It's like, we feel like we've been starved for fantasy movies. And it's like, nope, this one's going to stink. It's like it's like the what do you call it? Like Punxsutawney Phil seeing his shadow, Groundhog seeing his shadow. It's like, now you're going to have multiple more years with 0 to none fantasy movies. Dean Powell says, Red Sonja has such an awkward opening with the goddess telling Sonya what just happened to her. Yeah, it's just so bad. I mean, Brigitte Nielsen, not good, right? But at least I understand the Brigitte Nielsen factor, because you can forget sometimes, like, that these people were kind of on the rise a little bit. I don't remember if it was after, probably was Rocky 3 or Beverly Hills Cop 2 or whatnot. But I mean, she was a strong, she was certainly someone who people knew. And so I get them putting it in there, but the whole movie is just kind of bad. And I think what Arnold has in there for a hot minute, just to kind of give her a little bit of a rub. And then I forget exactly what he does. I should probably watch Red Sonja again just to see the awfulness again. I think, is that it for history? Historical events. All right, that's just some. All right, so I'll just do a historical event. I'm just gonna have one for the latest in a long line of historical events. Otherwise, this list will be a mile long. I don't think I need that much. And our historical event it's another D100. Is that my D10? Looks like it. I got 81. 81 is religious rise. Okay. Okay. Let's start looking at this, because otherwise we're gonna have this list. It's gonna become too much to look at in a single go. Well, it already is way too much to look at in a single thing, but at least we can kind of come through. Let's see. Hero says it's the advent of streaming services. They release shows based on those old properties now, or make their own movies that fly under the radar. This is true, but I'm talking about, like, if you look, and there's probably no way to look at it. It'd be good to do the research at some point, but I'm talking about, like, from the 80s to just the 90s. So pre-streaming, really pre-internet, or just the earliest internets, where you go from having stuff like Clash of the Titans, Excalibur, Beastmaster, Crow, Dragon Slayer, even something like Q. And I'm sure there's more. And then there's stuff like the Sword and the Sorcerer, Lady Hawk. There's, I'm sure I'm even missing up other ones. I mean, the Conan movies, even Red Sonja. There was a lot. There was a lot, right? It felt like, at least from a kid's perspective, that you had a pretty good run of movies that were coming out and then were on cable TV, and if you had cable or whatever, HBO, you just had this kind of good. Now, they weren't movies that were making big money in the box office. They weren't really represented in the movie theaters too much. I mean, I'm sure not that they weren't in movies, but they weren't kind of at the tops of people's minds. Certainly weren't getting awards or anything like that. But there was this kind of steady stream of these kind of movies that they were decent. They felt like they were taking it seriously. Like one of the things I appreciate about a movie like Krull, let's say, is that it's a little bit goofy. I love Krull, but I hate the whole like love conquering at the end. That drives me bananas. But you have very early, Liam Neeson is in there. You've got I forget who else is in there. Hagrid, I forget his name. He died just fairly recently, like the last year or two. He was in there. Good actors who are taking the roles and playing them pretty straight. It doesn't look like they're treating it like a goof, right? I love the glaive. It doesn't, there is a real weapon called the glaive, and this looks nothing like it, but was kind of cool, and the beast and all stuff, and it was like is neat, and it felt like there was kind of a steady stream. And then it seems like, at least my memory seems to, and it could have been me getting older and everything else, that you kind of get into the 90s and it just sort of drops off. Like you don't see that anymore. Maybe video rentals and the whole thing, because at this point, Blockbuster and video things are still alive and well. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know what changed the rise of Uwe Boll movies, and he did some fantasy or kind of medieval type movies. I'm not sure. But something seemed to change, and it would be good to do some research. And it probably has nothing. It's probably as simple as that the people making these movies just thought that there were other genres that were more lucrative, or just that maybe they felt like sci-fi kind of or fantasy was sort of tapped out. I'm not sure. Be interesting. I'm sure people have. I mean, I assume people have written about it or whatever, but I don't know. All right, so our Kingdom 1, which we thought might be our starting location, maybe not, because they seem like they might be good for sort of an evil sort of antagonistic people culture. We don't have names for anything yet, but their dispute with their dispute with a neighboring state is that something that the neighboring state has done is causing problems. Another state that borders them is they widely admire the culture of another state that's nearby. The current problem on the horizon is that they've got some kind of verminous monsters that are swarming, And this could be a great original or potential first kind of adventure idea, is something to do with this verminous swarms. And it seems like probably I'll link those two together because that makes sense too, right? That the dispute has to do with something that has caused the verminous monsters to swarm. And then in terms of what's good happening, we've got two internal rivals have started to make peace. The theme that we have is that there's kind of a sense of triumph of a recent victory. Now we get to the peoples. The native peoples tend to be ruddy or tan complexion with light brown hair. The hair texture of the hair is thin and fine. The eyes tend to be in ambers and yellows. They're either short and stocky or tall and slender as a general rule. They like to do patterned hair shaving or depilation. They have a tail of some sort. They esteem superiority, ethnic superiority over all outsiders is a value that they like, which tends to put them, for me anyway, on the antagonistic kind of track. Their unit of social identity is mutual assistance brotherhoods. That's interesting. Their sort of template, if we were going to match them up with an Earth society, Aztec-ish. They have a single monarch. The ruling classes are the citizens of a special city or an old homeland. We'll have to figure that out, but they're basically citizens. The legitimacy is they led the nation to greater glory and pride. They have a very powerful and respected judicial system. The senior-most representative of the ruling class is who is that ruler. The struggle with the government is that there is currently a disfavored class that's being oppressed. So we got these kind of class issues going on here. So we've got that there's one sort of special people who's held up above others. Maybe the old homeland makes sense. I don't know. The special city might also make sense. And that some folks are being sort of held down for not being maybe in that class. The current ruler is an outsider with a few existing allies, so tenuous position. That's good in terms of intrigues. Problems are that they ministers, they might not be actual ministers, but whatever. The political groups there's factional infighting, which is also good. The strength of the government is the populace is convinced it will bring good. They believe in their government. The government's not particularly stable, significant problems, but it is still functioning. And there are officials who are rapaciously grasping tax farmers, trying to boost up taxes. A major faction of officials has collapsed. That's the most recent governmental effect. And how did these people kind of come? They were in a conquering army that went native, and then they became the ruling class. So that makes sense that there's an original city they're from. Natural disasters has been the last historical crisis. How did they overcome it? Grim determination. At one point, it controlled the trade of an entire region. And then eventually it failed. It was the crisis, which would be the earthquake, which meant sense they're on the coast. And they fled. What became of the unabsorbed survivors? They fled to refuge in a neighboring nation. And then they had a religious rise also. So a lot of good stuff in here. Actually, a lot of it, I always love when the dice kind of make sense. I'm getting a sense now that we've got that there actually used to be from here. And maybe this originally was a land bridge. Earthquakes. Cut this off. Flooding. Cut all this off. Maybe even this is sunken or half sunken, and the people went to the mainland. But these original people, they form the ruling class. And that maybe either they used to control this or they still do, and that they were able to that they were able to basically control. We talk about them controlling the trade because they were able to control this bay. Maybe they still do, or maybe they don't anymore. But that at one point historically, they controlled this bay, maybe even out into the more open ocean, and so they were in this power spot. So I think the dice and the tables did us a lot of good. I think maybe I'll put them here, but I don't know if I want to start here. I feel like that's too, or at least, or maybe I'd say I don't want to be from there. It might be interesting to start the game being there. Maybe I've traveled. Maybe I start from something neighboring here and I've come up the coast. And so I start in this town, city, but I'm actually from here or here, maybe even here. I don't know what to figure it out, but this is good. I will roll up some more of these over the weekend so that you don't have to sit through me rolling these up. Some people love this stuff a lot as I'm going through this stuff, but it always pains me because I feel like I'm not making as much progress as maybe people would like. And I do want to get to actually playing, as I've had like 4 or 5 weeks now of just doing all the prep stuff. Hero says it sounds like that Dr. Seuss story about people who have stars on them. Oh, the Sneeches. Let's see. Dean Powell says, start in the wagon on your way to execution along with the horse thief and rebels. What was this? Skyrim? We Skyrimming it? Yeah, I don't know if I'll do in media rest kind of starts like that can be good. I don't know if I'm gonna do that here. Because you always never know playing solo. You just end up flubbing some dice rolls and suddenly you get executed. Or what happens in Skyrim, right? They actually let you go for something, right? There's actually no chance of you actually getting executed in that little starting bit, right? It's always like the guy lets you go or they give you a warning or something happens. Yeah, I could see being like fresh off the boat, like having traveled maybe across here, maybe coming over here. But it feels like this, I really like what we've got here. But it feels like that's more than I want to chew. I don't want to, I feel like I don't want to start there. I want that to be somewhere where I get to eventually. So maybe instead of beelining it, it'd be something if I started maybe over here or maybe here in the swamps where there might be some interesting things. Eventually I can either make my way around the sort of land area over here or boat by boat. You know what I'm saying? But good stuff. And look, I like it was like a year or so ago. I went through the Worlds Without Number stuff, and we did do some work with it. So it's great to pull that out again and look at it. It gives you a lot. I almost feel like it gives me too much, or more than I feel like you need. Maybe that's something in kind of Worlds Without Number in general. I mean, I know ultimately you can use as much or as little of the book anytime as you want. It definitely gives you a lot, and I don't think I'd even gone through getting everything. And look at that giant list. But I think ultimately for a lot of these, at least for the hinterland regions, I'll roll that stuff up or I'll ask questions when I get to it. But this was good. So I'll have to come up with at least one more. Actually, probably I'm thinking 3 more because I'm going to want to know how big this area is. I want to know the neighboring ones, and then I kind of need to know about where I am. Hey, nothing. Actually, I'm just finishing up, but we did some good work. I created one of the kingdoms. I thought it was going to be the kingdom I was going to start in, but in actuality, it's probably going to be an antagonistic kingdom, kind of Aztec Empire-ish. They, let's see, just in broad strokes, I don't want to repeat myself for the folks that were here, but they've got tails. They like to pattern their hair. They're either short and stocky or tall and slender. They've got amber to yellow eyes. But basically, they got a single monarch. They really value, They really value their own societal superiority over all outsiders. They've had some struggles of late, but there's an interesting concept brewing of these folks having once been a major power, perhaps even a maritime power, controlling the entire Bay region, that because of an earthquake, perhaps either submerging or half submerging or cutting off some of these areas, that they're sort of down, or at least not what they once were. Maybe not so much that like they were Rome and they owned all this, but that they controlled it, like say the Phoenicians or something similar like that, where they maybe they got tribute, they were getting tribute from these kingdoms, kind of flexing their muscles. I think like the Aztecs tended to do too. If I'm recalling some of the stuff I read about Aztecs, they would have lots of tributes from neighboring tribes, which is one of the reasons why when the Spanish came, no one really wanted to help them because they'd been leaning on people on the other kingdoms or other nation states or whatever you want to call it, other peoples around, so that when everything started to go bad for them, and that the Spaniards were able to pull support away because they hated the Aztecs at that point. Yeah, feel free to rewind, be kind and rewind. Nothing absolutely, it'll be here for you. On that note, I guess if you could give a thumbs up on your way out or on your way in, for that matter, that would be awesome. If you found yourself in here and you're not subscribed to the channel, you feel like subscribing, that'll also be awesome. I promise you, within a week or so, we will get to actually playing, and I'll be done with all this. Getting to the finish line. Hopefully, it's useful. It's valuable for me, so I hope it is valuable for you in some way or another. Other than that, folks, have a great rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. Game on, and I will talk to you later. Bye now.